Hi everyone, this is Ray the Singing Tallit, picking up with part 2 of Ki Tisa, or When You Take. That's Exodus 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34, and 1 Kings 18, 20 through 39. That's a lot of reading, and then we also have, of course, the Brit Hadashah reading. We've got 2 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter, and the 1st through the 18th verses. And also just picked up another one, Mark 9. It's Mark chapter 9 as well. I left off earlier today because the kids' nap time was over, so I had to get back to the business of parenting. But now they're down for the sleep of the evening, so I can get back to reading the Torah portion here. We're in Exodus chapter 33. And Jehovah said to Moshe, "Depart and go up hence, you and the people which you have brought out of the land of Egypt, unto the land which I swore unto Abraham, and to Isaac, and unto Jacob, and to say, and unto thy seed will I give it." Now, there's a question. So many times before he said, "Remember, I led you out of Egypt, I brought you out of Egypt, I brought you out of Egypt." But when he started having this problem about the golden calf, while he was talking to Moses, it became, "Moses, you brought these people out of Egypt." Moses was like, No, you brought them people out of Egypt. You made sure that we would remember it, and said to remember that. And so here we see in chapter 33, he says, "Moses, take these people that you have brought out of Egypt." I wonder if there's a little hint of still being heard about what happened in those words. "And I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanite, and the Amorite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, unto a land flowing with milk and honey. For I will not go up in the midst of thee, for you are a stiff-necked people, lest I consume you in the way." And when the people heard these evil tidings, they mourned, and no man did put on his ornaments. For Jehovah had said unto Moshe, saying to the children of Israel, "You are a stiff-necked people. I will come up into the midst of you in a moment, and consume you. Therefore now put off your ornaments from you, that I may know what to do unto you." So, and the children of Israel stripped themselves of their ornaments by Mount Horeb. Let's see what that word ornament is. I have a feeling that is weaponry, but I'm going to say it's actually horse ornaments, because the one time I did a study on the celestial sphere and lining it up with the Torah, and as I recall, when those ornaments showed up, it turned out to be horse ornaments. Let's look it up. That's 33:6. Let's see, 33:6. What does the Strong's say about ornaments? All right, I'm opening up the concordance here, and this of their ornaments. It says that is H 57:16. A day. Let's see. Of the ornaments, most splendid ornaments used of the ornaments of a horse. Trappings, yes. Many attribute to this word the significance of the mouth, as in something that has to do with the mouth. That's where the horse would come into it. And I recall when I was reading through here that it was at that time that Pegasus was in the sky, that constellation, when I was lining them up. But it's been, it's probably been 5 years ago. I was attempting to try to get it all hammered out, but I really didn't know enough at the time. And probably, there was definitely a pattern, but I was incapable of lining everything up perfectly, so eventually I just kind of dropped the pursuit of it, but learned a lot of interesting things. And definitely I would say to you that the Torah is written in the heavens above. And of course, I believe that's exactly why it says the Torah is not in heaven, that someone would have to go up there and get it for you. In other words, you can literally just look up and see it, that there it is right over your head. You got to remember, we're dealing with a people who live their lives up and down with the sun, and then at night, when the stars would come out, they would see the beauty of the heavens and the ornate nature of the stars and the organization of the stars. Everyone knew how to navigate by the stars, because you literally could not go anywhere in the ancient world if you did not know how to navigate by the stars. There were very few roads. So even if you traveled over land, you still needed to understand how the stars were positioned and what time of year it was, so that you could know what direction you were heading in and how to get to somewhere you were going to. Now, a modern sea captain, and I can get this confirmed from a actual sea captain friend I have, whose name is Shane Mason. Shane confirms for me that during the test to become a captain for a boat, they still require you to learn to use the constellations to navigate by the stars. I'm not sure if he actually had to use a sextant, but if that GPS gives out on you on the open water, you will die out there if you do not know how to navigate by the stars. All right, let's see here. Continue from 6. And Moshe took the tabernacle and pitched it without the camp, afar off from the camp, and called it the tabernacle of the congregation. And it came to pass that everyone which sought Jehovah went out into the tabernacle of the congregation, which was without the camp. And it came to pass when Moses went out, unto the tabernacle, that all the people rose up and stood every man at his tent door and looked at Moshe until he had gone into the tabernacle. And it came to pass, as Moshe entered into the tabernacle, a cloudy pillar descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and Jehovah talked with Moshe. And all the people saw the cloudy pillar stand at the tabernacle door, and all the people rose up and worshipped, and every man in the tent of his door, or door of his tent, actually in his tent door. And Jehovah spoke unto Moshe face to face, as a man speaks unto a friend. Now, like I just said in that previous chapter, that conversation they had up on the mountain was the way the best man is talking to the bridegroom when he's saying, man, you have got to be the best version of who you are right now, because everybody's watching. If you go out there and kill that woman for what she's done to you in front of all these people, all they're going to say about you is, you're the God who set your bride free so you could go murder her in the wilderness. You know, this is what he says. He talks to Moshe like a friend. And he turned again into the camp, but his servant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, departed not out of the tabernacle. And Moshe said unto Jehovah, see, you said unto me, bring up this people, and you have not let me know whom you will send with me. Yet you have said, I know you by name, and you have also found grace in my sight. Now therefore I pray you, and there's a little note here that's what was said in 2 Timothy. Now therefore I pray, if I have found grace in your sight, show me now the way, or your way, that I may know you, that I may find grace in your sight, and consider that this nation is my people, or your people. And he said, my presence shall go with you, and will give you rest. And he said unto them, now, by the way, this statement, he said, my presence will go with you and give you rest. This is one of the reasons why the modern Christian church tries to put forth the idea that it's no longer necessary to keep the Sabbath, because Christ is the rest that God has given you. And this is kind of the idea that when you're in his presence, you are in his rest. And since Christ is living in you, you're in his presence, therefore you're in his rest, you don't have to keep the Sabbath. This is, of course, not sensical, because the law of the Sabbath is applicable at this time while they are in his presence. In fact, we're going to see, they had to take a man and ask him, literally, Moses, what do we do with this guy who was gathering sticks? We don't know what we're supposed to do with him. And he had to take it directly to Jehovah, and of course, it was a death sentence. And he said unto him, I will give you rest. And he said unto him, if your presence go not with me, carry us not up hence. For wherein shall it be known here that I and your people have found grace in your sight? Is it not in that you go with us? So shall we be separated, I and your people, from all the people that are upon the face of the earth. And Jehovah said to Moses, I will do this thing also that you have spoken, for you have found grace in my sight, and I know you by name. And he said, I beseech you, show me your glory. And we've heard that song many times. Show me your glory. And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim the name of Jehovah before you, and I will be gracious to whom I am gracious, and I will show mercy unto upon whom I will show mercy. And he said, you cannot see my face, so no man see me and live. And Jehovah said, behold, there is a place by me, and you shall stand upon a rock, and it shall come to pass, while the glory passes by, that I will put you in the cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand, while I pass by, and I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back parts, but my face shall not be seen. Now, I had an interesting a fellow named Sakina, who is actually an Inuit from northern Alaska. I think he's actually from Nome, Alaska. He prefers you to call him First Nation, by the way. They don't like Inuit. You definitely don't call them Eskimos. That's totally inappropriate. But they prefer the title First Nation. And he's a former pastor who's gotten really into teaching Hebrew root stuff and learning Hebrew. And it really finds it interesting because he can relate it to the language of his people in lots of ways. Because it's a language focused around doing, like it's a verb-based language. Everything's about action and doing, and everything's very solid. You know, everything's very what you can smell, touch, taste, and feel. There's not a lot of, words. I'll give you a quick, for instance. If I say heaven to you in the English, this image appears in your mind of, little angels playing harps and flying around in the clouds and walking on streets of gold and all these other things. Well, heaven in Hebrew is shamayim. That means the visible sky. That's what you see when you look up over your head. That's heaven. Simple. There's nothing else to it. You can look up and see it. You don't have to imagine it. You can just see it with your eyes. Which, of course, why if you're born blind, it's a terrible burden because you'll never be able to see the glory that the creation says of God. You'll never get to see light, and seeing light is a very important part. I mean, you're literally told to be the light. And that should tell you how important light is in the faith itself. So he said that the cleft of the rock, he said, was actually, in his understanding, to be the space between the fingers when he put them over Moses' face. And he said the reason Moses didn't need to see his face, because the face wasn't the part that was important. He said, you can see my back, because the word in Hebrew, the Pesha, the word that gets translated as Passover, really means to leap ahead or to jump ahead of something. So his interpretation of that is that Jehovah jumped ahead of the Abad. Now the Abad is the destroying angel. The Abad, the teeth, or however you want to refer to it. That entity which went and killed the firstborn. The houses that had the blood on the doorpost, in his understanding, Jehovah appeared, put his hands over the doorposts, and took the beatings that were meant to kill the firstborn. And that's why he said, look upon my back, and you'll know who I am, because his back would have been, damaged and scarred from the Abad striking him and him taking the blow that was meant to kill the firstborn in that house, and he took and bared that burden for him. And again, that's neither here nor there. That's just one interpretation that one fellow shared with me. But I can definitely tell you that this should inspire you. That even when someone tries to do their best to block you out of the kingdom of God and say, well, you're not doing this and you're not doing that, so you're not worthy. Well, guess what? It doesn't even matter if you're worthy, because what does he say? He said, let me find it. He said, I will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. So you need to understand what he's saying is, I can show mercy on anyone I want to, not me, him. Jehovah is saying that he will show mercy upon whomever he chooses to show mercy. It is none of our business what he does with people who are not in the covenant that we're a part of. That is not our business or our concern. We have no right to limit or control or even attempt to stop or control anything that he does. He is the master. We are not the master. If he goes out there and he decides to raise up Nebuchadnezzar, then he's going to raise up Nebuchadnezzar. If he's going to bless Nebuchadnezzar to be the greatest king that ever lived, then he's going to bless Nebuchadnezzar to be the greatest king that ever lived. If he gives Nebuchadnezzar the right to write a chapter in the book of Daniel, then he has given Nebuchadnezzar the right to write and it required nothing to Nebuchadnezzar until, of course, Nebuchadnezzar spent 7 years on his hands and knees thinking he was an animal, and then woke up and said, wow, I guess your God really is the God of creation. I was wrong, which is awesome of him to say. But it doesn't mean he necessarily, converted to Judaism or however you want to say it. Maybe he didn't even become a follower of Jehovah. Maybe he simply acknowledged that Jehovah was the king of all the gods. I don't know, because Nebuchadnezzar's son definitely wasn't an obedient follower of Jehovah. Anyways, let's continue to chapter 34 there. And Jehovah said unto Moshe, Hew these 2 tables of stone like unto the first, and I will write upon these tables that were in the first, which you broke. And be ready in the morning, and come up the mountain of Mount Sinai, and present yourself there to me in the top of the mountain. And no man shall come up with you, neither shall any man be seen there throughout all the mountain, neither in the flocks nor the herds that feed before the mountain. And he hewed 2 tables of stone like unto the first. And Moshe rose up early in the morning, and went out unto Mount Sinai, and Jehovah had commanded him. And he took in his hand the 2 tables of stone. And Jehovah descended in the cloud, and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name of Jehovah. Interesting that Jehovah comes and proclaims his own name. That's awesome. And Jehovah passed by before him, and proclaimed, the Jehovah Elohim, merciful and gracious, long-suffering, and abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgressions and sin, and that will by no means clear, and they added in here in the King James, the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, and upon the children's children, and upon to the 3rd and the 4th generation. And remember, that says visiting the iniquity. It doesn't say inflicting the punishment for iniquity. It says visiting it upon them. Some of us may refer to that as the familiar spirit, but it's like he said to Cain. It's there knocking at your door. It coucheth, waiting for you. Doesn't mean you got to open the door. Doesn't mean you got to go and sit on the couch with it. But it is definitely going to come and knock at the door, because you're an easy target for that kind of. I'll put it to you like this: anything your family's been involved in, you're going to be an easy target to get hit with it again. It's just up to you to be the one who breaks that cycle. If your daddy was a drug addict, it's very likely you're going to be a drug addict unless you really understand that that's a burden that's been aimed at you, because you need to be the one who can love your father enough to forgive him so you do not have to walk in this person. Let me explain why I'm saying this. My dad was not the greatest man in the world by any means, in my summation, as a child. Okay, he died when I was 18, so I didn't have time to really get to know him as an adult, which is unfortunate, because the eyes of a child are the eyes of innocence, but they're also the eyes of terrible judgment. Because when a child is harmed by an adult, even when the adult doesn't understand exactly how they're harming a child, that goes into your heart. You bury that pain, and you bury that hurt, and you bury that pain, you bury that hurt. Over time, if you do not forgive your father or your mother, if you do not honor them, if instead you hold judgment against them, then you're going to have the austere privilege of finding out what is necessary to truly judge someone. And guess what? You got to walk a mile in their shoes before you can truly judge someone for what they have done to you. So if you judge your parent, your daddy was a drug addict, you're going to become a drug addict. Because the only way you can understand the burden that was upon him is by carrying that burden too. If you can't let it go, it's going to come and sit on top of you, and you're going to experience it firsthand, and you're going to transfer it then down to your children, and then it's going to be up to them to break that burden. Hopefully you'll live long enough that they can get to know you and that you can work on it together, hopefully, if you're both believers. Fortunately, my dad was not a believer, so I had no point of reference that I could really share with him. And like I said, he died when I was too young to, I was 26, at least 8 years later before I started even beginning to walk this walk. And, he was long dead at that point. But I've, had thankfully many spiritual fathers and teachers who have helped me to understand that forgiveness is very important, especially when it relates to the way you view your parents. All right. So keeping mercy. And Moshe made haste and bowed his head towards the earth and worshipped me. And he said, If now I have found grace in your sight, O Jehovah, let my Lord, Jehovah, I pray you, go among us, for it is a stiff-necked people, and pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for your inheritance. So he's literally saying, take us all for your inheritance. And he said, behold, I make a covenant. Before all you people, I will do marvels such as have not been done in all of the earth, nor in any nation, nor in all the people among you which shall see the work of Jehovah, for it is a terrible thing that I will do with you. Observe, and when it says terrible, it's like incredible. Like Ivan the Terrible is more like Ivan the Magnificent, more than actually the terrible is probably not the best word to translate it. Observe you that which I command you this day. Behold, I will drive out before you the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Take heed for yourself, lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, whither you go, lest it be a snare in the midst of you. But you shall destroy their altars, break their images, and cut down their groves. For you shall worship no other God, for Jehovah, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Now understand, jealousy is that's not a bad thing. To be jealous means that you get angry when someone tries to steal something that's yours. That's what real jealousy is. Covetousness, like when my 12-year-old daughter thinks of the word jealousy, she thinks somebody wants something that somebody else has. That's covetousness. That's not the same thing. Jealousy is a righteous anger when someone tries to steal what is yours. Lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they go whoring after their gods, and do sacrifice unto their gods, and one call you, and you eat of his sacrifice. So here we go. Note 1 Corinthians 10, do not eat what has been sacrificed unto other idols, right? You may not even touch the food, whether you think that you can't eat. If you're like, well, I can eat all the bacon I want to. That's fine. I'm not mad at you. Do what you want to do. But it specifically says in the New Testament, from the words of Peter, you may not eat animals that have been strangled, and you definitely may not eat any animal that's been sacrificed to an idol. All right. And you take of your, if they take of, you take of their daughters unto your sons, and their daughters go a whoring after their gods, and make your sons go a whoring after their gods. This, of course, is Solomon we're talking about, but much earlier than when he gets there. You shall make you no molten gods. The feast of unleavened bread shall you keep 7 days. Shall you eat the unleavened bread as I commanded you in the time of the month of Abib. For the month of Abib you came out of the land of Egypt. Now, Abib, we've discussed before, is a condition of the barley in the fields, not of the wheat, but of the barley. When barley is ripe enough that you can cook it and eat it, it is Abib, but it's not ready to be harvested. And Nehemiah Gordon does a really good study on explaining the intricacies of exactly what Abib is. All that opened the matrix is mine, that is the womb, the matrix, and every firstling, that's firstborn, among your cattle, whether an ox or a sheep, that is male. And they added that in the King James, that is male. But the firstling of an ass you shall redeem with a lamb, and if you redeem him not, then you shall break his neck. All the firstborn of your sons you shall redeem, and none shall appear before me empty. 6 days shall you work, but on the 7th shall you rest. In earing time and in harvest you shall rest. And you shall observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and of the feast of the ingathering at year's end. Thrice in the year shall all of the men children appear before Jehovah Elohim, the Elohim of Israel. And some people are like, well, it should be everybody, but it does say B'nai Israel. It doesn't say Bat. It says B'nai Israel, which is the sons of Israel shall appear. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure every man brought his wife and children along with him when he came to the feast, because, what are you going to do? Leave your family unprotected? I wouldn't. It seems to me like it would be appropriate that you should bring your family along with you. But you wouldn't expect your wife or your children to have to come up and make a sacrifice. Even though there was a court for women there at the temple in the first century, even though it was not a place where you made offerings. But women could actually come up there and hang out near the court. All right. Shall make no molten gods. Everything that opens the matrix. 6 days shall you work, and the 7th you shall rest. In airing time and in the harvest shall you rest. Observe the feast of weeks. Thrice a year appear. For I will cast out the nations before you and enlarge your borders. Neither shall any man desire your land when you shall go up to appear before Jehovah, your Elohim, thrice in the year. So that means nobody's going to come and try to steal your land when you go up to appear. Now, I assume that means no other Israelite man's going to try to steal your land because they're all going to be there. You shall not offer the blood of a sacrifice with leavening. Neither shall the sacrifice of the feast of Passover be left until the morning. The first of the first fruits of the land shall you bring into the house of Jehovah your Elohim, that you shall not see the kid in its mother's milk. And the Lord said unto Moshe, Write these words, for after the tenor of these words have I made the covenant with you in the land of Israel. And he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. And he did neither eat bread nor drink water, as he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. So here we see another 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness without eating. Of course, I think anyone who's read the New Testament knows who I would be referring to there. And it came to pass when Moshe came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tables of testimony in Moshe's hand, when he came down from the mount, that Moshe wist not the skin of his face had shone while he talked with him. So basically, this is where Moses' face starts to glow. And finally, one translation said Moses has horns at this point, because for some reason, one of the Hebrew words that says his face shone it is very similar to the word for horns. So some of the famous paintings of Moses actually have, and like sculptures, I think Michelangelo did a sculpture of Moses where he has little horns on the top of his head. So if you ever see a picture of Moses and he has horns, this is why he has horns on his head. And you may also say it's because he went up to go visit the moon god, so he's got the moon god horns on his head, right? We should explain why they made Hathor a moon goddess, the bull goddess. But anyways, again, that's neither here nor there. But yes, you will definitely see some famous art with Moses with a pair of horns on his head. And he came down, and his face shone when he talked to him. And when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, and beheld the skin of his face to shone, and they were afraid to come nigh to him. And Moshe called unto them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned to him. And Moshe talked with them, and afterward all the children of Israel came nigh, and he gave them in commandment all that Jehovah had spoken to him in Mount Sinai. Until Moses had done speaking with them, they put a veil on his face. But when Moshe went out before Jehovah to speak with him, he took the veil off until he came in. And he came out and spake with the children of Israel that which he was commanded. And the children of Israel saw the face of Moshe, that the skin of Moshe's face shone. And Moshe put the veil upon his face again until he went in to speak with him. So at this point, some people say the reason that Moshe did that was because he didn't want people like thinking he was some kind of new god, because his face shone. You know, whatever it was about being in the presence of Jehovah for that time that caused his face to radiate. He became like a light, right? He became like a light of the world. His face literally radiated. And at that point he said, well, I better cover this up or people are going to start worshiping me like I'm God. And I would definitely say that a lot of people at least thought of Moshe as like a pharaoh figure, because when he dies, we'll actually see him be buried in the manner of the Egyptians, in the manner of how they would bury a pharaoh. They'll spend, I think it was 40 days in nitron, which is salt, and then 30 days of mourning. So a 70-day cycle would take place when a pharaoh was being buried. And I believe we'll see Moshe go through that. It may only be 30 days. They may have just buried him and not actually dried him out and mummified him. They did do that to Joseph, who they were carrying with them at this time. Remember, they got the mummy of Joseph with them while they're going through the wilderness at this time, because he said, promise me that you'll take me back, to the land of my fathers and bury me with my fathers. All right, the second part of the reading is going to be, or it's called the Haftorah Portion. Haftorah is a remnant from the time of the Greek occupation. And I've heard rabbis say it both ways. Some will say they were not allowed to read the Torah because they were not allowed to have their own law. And then I've heard other rabbis say they were allowed to read the Torah, but they were not allowed to implement the Torah, because that would mean they were implementing their own law. They could read about it, but they could not have it as a law in their land. So from what I understand, the Haftorah Portion comes from that time when basically some people apparently were not allowed to read the Torah. So what they would do is actually find portions from the scrolls of the prophets or the histories that would line up with what was in the Torah portion, so that at least they would be able to continue some of these lessons on down. And if anybody knows a more accurate description, please feel free to throw a comment down there in the bottom and link me to something. We live in such a extremely connected world today. There's no reason that anyone couldn't know anything that they chose to know. We live in a time of ask and you will receive. I mean, sometimes you don't have to ask. You just click the wrong thing and you receive, even when you didn't mean to. All right. Where are we at? 1 Kings. All right. I'm trying to use this large print Bible, but I may have to end up dropping. Oh, there it is. Excuse me. All right, 1 Kings chapter 18. And I'll just read the whole section because the word's beautiful. Might as well read it. Saw an interesting documentary today about the King James Bible and how much time they took to make sure that this thing flowed when people would read it, that the language worked real well together, so that a person who wasn't familiar could actually read it and not stumble over every other word trying to read through it. And you've heard me stumble through a lot because I've been converting all the these and the thous and the whilst and the won'ts and all that into more modern language so that people don't get confused when I'm reading it to them. All right, so that's chapter 18, and that's going to be verses 20 through 39. I'm going to go ahead and read 20 through 39. Or tell you what, I'll just read all 18. And it came to pass after many days that the word of Jehovah came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go, show yourself unto Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth. So this is when Ahab is facing off with, I shouldn't even really say it's Ahab. It's when Jezebel is facing off with Elijah. Ahab is taking a back seat to being a king, at least in my opinion, because he's married a Tyrian princess. That's Jezebel, whose name literally means the Virgin of Baal. That's what her name means. She is a daughter of the kingdom of Tyre, and that's the kingdom that's up the coast, northern up the coast from Israel. The actual castle city of Tyre is a tiny little island right off the side of the mainland there, and that's where the royal family lived at, and where they had their big port that they were famous for. And Alexander the Great, when he actually came and conquered Tyre, he had to build a land bridge about 800 meters long out to that island so he could conquer it, because they wouldn't give up, even though Jerusalem surrendered when Alexander the Great came. And if you ever want to see get an interesting piece of history, just check that out. How when Alexander the Great came to Jerusalem, the city fathers came out and said to him, "We surrender to you, because Daniel has prophesied that you will rule and reign." And he accepted the surrender of any city that would surrender to him. They did not plunder or destroy those cities. They put them to tribute. But one of the extra things for Jerusalem was that the male children in Jerusalem being born had to all be named Alexander, which is why you can meet Jews today who are still named Alexander. I have personally met 2 Jews who are named Alexander. Excuse me. And Elijah went to show himself unto Ahab, and there was a sore famine in Samaria. And Ahab called Obadiah, which was the governor of his house. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly, for it was so, when Jezebel cut off the prophets of Jehovah, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water. So this man, even though he was right there in the house of Ahab, went and protected some of the prophets of Jehovah. And Ahab said unto Obadiah, Go into the land, and into all the fountains of water, and to all the brooks, and peradventure we may find grass to save the horses and the mules alive, for we have lost not all of our beasts. Because remember, there's a drought that has taken place because, Jehovah declared, if you walk contrary to me, I will not give you rain. That's one of the punishments, right? And so they divided the land between them, and they passed throughout it. Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went another way by himself. And Obadiah was in the way, and behold, Elijah met him, and he knew him, and fell on his face, and said, Are you that, my Lord Elijah? Please understand, when a prophet shows up, that is dangerous. Prophets call down fire from heaven, like Elijah literally calls down fire from heaven. Prophets chop heads off of priests of Baal. That's one of the things Elijah did. Prophets kill 10,000 men with the jawbone of an ass. That's what Samson did. Prophets have strange powers that are beyond the scope of what people normally are able to do. And when they come to town, it's because they usually have one message: repent or be destroyed. Repent or face the punishment, face the judgment that's coming. Or sometimes it's just judgment's coming, get ready. There's no repentance. All right, let's see. Take, for instance, when Jonah came, the prophet Jonah, if he had simply done what Jehovah had ordered, went straight to Nineveh, they probably never would have given in and repented of what they had done. Because remember, Nineveh is the city capital of the Assyrians, who are the people who destroyed northern Israel. So Jonah hates them, and he doesn't want to go and doesn't want to give them the opportunity to repent. And Jehovah says, do it. And he says, well, I'm going to get on a boat and disappear. And of course, then the fish comes and he gets thrown overboard of the fish. Fish swims him all the way over to Nineveh, spits him out on the shore. Now remember, Nineveh most likely was worshippers of Dagon, the fish god. So a giant fish spits a prophet out onto the ground, and he walks in the city and starts telling them to repent for what they've done. Is it any surprise that a city full of people who worship a fish god would not repent when a giant fish spits a prophet out in their midst to tell them what they should do? Basically, if you just obey Jehovah, he won't have to keep doing things the way that they don't need to be done. Just work with him. Just do what he says when he says it. And he said, What have I sinned, that you wouldest deliver your servant into the hand of Ahab to slay me? And as Jehovah your Elohim liveth, there is no nation or kingdom whither my Lord hath not sent to seek me. And when they said, He is not there, he took an oath of the kingdom of the nation, that they found him not. And now you say, Go, tell your Lord, behold, Elijah is here. And it shall come to pass, as soon as I am gone from you, that the Spirit of Jehovah shall carry you where I do not know. And so when I come and tell Ahab, and he cannot find you, he shall slay me. But I, your servant, fear Jehovah from my youth. Was it not told, my Lord, what I did when Jezebel slew the prophets of the Lord, and how I hid 100 men of the Lord's prophets by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water? And now you say, Go, tell your Lord, behold, Elijah is here, and he shall slay me. And Elijah said, As Jehovah of hosts lives, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself to him in that day. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. And it came to pass when Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said unto him, Are you he that troubles Israel? Interesting that he would blame the man who was not king for being the man who troubles Israel. And it came to pass, right? And he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house, and that you have forsaken the commandments of Jehovah, and that you have followed after the Baalim. Now therefore send and gather to me all Israel upon Carmel, and the prophets of Baal, 450, the prophets of the groves, 400, and which eat at Jezebel's table. Now we're going to not see the 400 prophets of the grove. Those are probably women priestesses, by the way, because Asherah is the pole entity, the Asherah pole, the Christmas tree. So they say it's an Asherah pole, because she was represented by the goddess of the grove. So Baal, of course, the god of fire. So the Baal of Tyre is actually the god Hercules of the Greek pantheon, which is why some of the insults he's going to say concerning their Baal are going to make sense if you know who Hercules is. All right, and Elijah came unto all the people and said, How long will you choose between two options or opinions? If Jehovah be Elohim, then follow him. And if Baal be Elohim, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. So nobody was brave enough to say nothing. They were happy just, I'm going to worship this God, you can worship that God, and everything's cool. Nobody to say anything. And then Elijah came to the people. I, even I only, remain a prophet of Jehovah, but Baal's prophet are 450 men. Let them therefore give us 2 bullocks, and let them choose 1 bullock. Now the question is he actually saying, I'm the only real prophet left, or is he not bringing up the fact that there's 100 of them hidden in a cave that Obadiah has saved? Maybe he's like, don't even worry about whatever y'all have heard about other prophets. I'm the only one here. I'll handle this business. We're going to do this. So put the bulls on the altars. Excuse me. And let them choose a bullock for themselves to cut it into pieces and lay it on the wood and put no fire under it. I will dress the other bullock and lay it on the wood and put no fire under it. Call you on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of Jehovah. And the Elohim that answers by fire, let him then be Elohim. And all of the people answered and said that it was well what he had spoken. And Elijah said unto the prophets of Baal, choose you 1 bullock for yourselves, and dress it first. For you are many, so call upon the name of your gods, but put no fire under your offering. And they took the bullock which they gave them, and they dressed it, and they called on the name of Baal from morning unto noon, saying, O Baal, hear us. But there was no voice, nor any that answered. And they leapt upon the altar which they had made. And it came to pass at noon that Elijah mocked them. Now when it says leapt, I wonder if that means that some of them killed themselves and threw themselves on the altar. Let's see what leapt is here. 18:26. Does it mean that they bled themselves onto it? There was no voice that answered, and they leapt upon the altar. Pasach. To leap ahead. There's the word. They peshacht upon the altar. To pass over. To spring over. And there's the word, right? To pass over, to pass by a place where the Euphrates River was crossed. To pass over, to spare, to be wrenched, to be dislocated. Interesting. So literally the word that they had attempted to do a Passover type maneuver, Interesting. So it says that they leapt upon the altar which they had made. And it came to pass at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, cry louder, for he is a God. Either he is talking, or he is pursuing, or he is in a journey, or perhaps he's asleep and must be awakened. The reason he's saying that is because Hercules was known for drinking and for sleeping and have to be woken up, and he'd go down into the underworld and fight the gods of the underworld to bring spring every year. So he's saying maybe he's on his journey down to the underworld right now. Maybe that's why I can't hear you. Or maybe he's drunk himself to sleep because he likes wine so much. Is any of this sound right? He's making fun of them. And they cried aloud and cut themselves after their manner with knives and lancets, till blood gushed out upon them. So now they're literally spilling their own blood, trying to make something happen. And it came to pass when midday was past, and they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, and there was neither a voice nor any answer, nor any that regarded. Elijah said unto the people, come near unto me. And all the people came near to him, and he repaired the altar of Jehovah that was broken down. And Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, unto whom the word of Jehovah came, saying, Israel shall be your name. And with the stones that he built an altar in the name of Jehovah, and he made a trench about the altar, and it was great, as it could contain 2 measures of seed. And he put the wood in order, and cut the bullock into pieces, and laid him on the wood, and said, fill 4 barrels with water, and pour it onto the burnt sacrifice and on the wood. And he said, do it a second time. And they did it a second time, and he said, do it a third time. And they did it a third time. And the water ran around about the altar, and until it filled the trench with water. And it came to pass at that time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that Elijah the prophet came near and said, Jehovah Elohim of Abraham, Yitzhak, and of Israel, let it be known this day that you are Elohim in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Hear me, O Jehovah, hear me, that this people may know that you are Jehovah Elohim, and that you have turned their heart back again. Then the fire of Jehovah fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and the dust, and it licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, that Jehovah, he is our Elohim. He is Jehovah, he is Elohim. And Elijah said unto them, take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. And they took them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook of the Kishron, and he slew them there. And Elijah said unto Ahab, okay, let's think about that for a second. So, is it saying that Elijah killed these men himself? Do you know how much physical exertion it requires to chop 450 people's heads off? Or do you even say, I don't know, maybe I doubt he slit their throats. He probably chopped their heads off. But needless to say, this is a fairly old man at the time. So either he was filled with supernatural strength to complete this activity, or it means that all of the people there killed the prophets of Baal. Either way is fine with me. It can be Elijah doing it personally, or all the people gathered up together, killing them, stoning them, and that'd be just fine with me. And Elijah said unto Ahab, get up and eat and drink, for there is a sound of the abundance of rain. So Ahab went up to eat and to drink, and Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, and he cast himself down upon the earth, and put his face between his knees, and said to his servant, go up now, look towards the sea. And he went up and looked, and said, there is nothing. And he said, go again 7 times. And then it came to pass at the 7th time, he said, behold, there arises a little cloud out of the sea, like a man's hand. And he said, go up, say unto Ahab, prepare your chariot, and get down, that the rain stop you not. And it came to pass in the meanwhile, that the heaven was blacked with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain, and Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. And the hand of Jehovah was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins, and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. So he has now personally killed all of the prophets of Baal. So I think that the reason that this reading is actually connected to the one we did is because we see here the building of the word is vain, which in English has taken on the meaning of thinking that there's something special about you, which is not what the word vanity means. Because people think, you're so vain. And they think of that song, oh, that's about a guy who's all into himself. So being vain means you're totally into yourself. No. The word vanity means useless, of no value, or pointless. So yes, that person is vain in the sense that everything they do has no real value, because all they do is work for themselves. A person who is more than vanity is someone who does the will of Jehovah and thereby serves the people around them. So that's how you would not be vain. Anyways, the prophets of Baal built a vain altar, which was completely pointless and useless because there's no other gods. There's just Jehovah. Everything that transpires comes from him and what he does. So there's really no point in even thinking of the idea of other gods even existing. Okay. So what happens when you have to do your Torah study after other people go to sleep? I think that's why this is the reading. So let's jump over to the New Testament, to 1 Corinthians 3. And I believe we're probably going to read about the laws concerning not eating certain things. But let's 1 Corinthians. This is Paul's epistle or letter to the Corinthians. 1:3. That is 1 Corinthians chapter 3. It says I should read to 18. All right, chapter 3. And, brethren, I could not speak unto you as unto spiritual, but as unto carnal, even as unto babes in Christ. I have fed you with milk, and not with meat. Because remember, we just read, do not see the calf and its mother's milk. So he's making a reference here saying, I've been careful not to mix the two. And remember, that was a type of fertility sacrifice that was made, I believe, by the Phoenicians. Nehemiah Gordon's got some stuff on that, but the ritual is what's being referred to now. Of course, modern Orthodox Jews will tell you, since it's mentioned 3 times, each time means something different, which is why they have a parve bakery, why they do not mix milk with baked goods, and they do not mix, like you can't you can't put butter in anything that's baked that they eat. So if you're going to get some cookies, you have to bake them with margarine, something like that. They can't use butter. So in that sense, they also extend it to mean you cannot eat milk with, like with meat. You can't eat cheese with meat, so no cheeseburgers. You're not allowed to mix any of that kind of stuff either. Though it doesn't specifically say that in the word, what it says is you may not see the calf and its mother's milk. So here we see Paul making reference. He's like, I did not mix the milk and the meat. I didn't try to create fertility, where it wasn't. I gave you the first, just like you'd feed a kid. And then I'm going to give you the stuff you have to actually chew on. And understand when it says meat, excuse me. Let's look what that word meat means in the Hebrew. It's in Greek. I'm betting that word is probably not the meat of an animal. Broma. Let's see. Food, literally, especially ceremonially, the things forbidden by the Jewish law, meat or victuals. So it is actually meat. He's not talking about, see, one of these old English words, meat, also means like grain. They would refer to that as meat. Or corn, which is meat. Of course, there's no corn in ancient Israel. So when you're reading your King James, make sure when it says corn, you read what exactly it's talking about, because there's no corn in ancient Israel. Corn comes from South America. So let's see here. I have fed you with milk and not with meat, for hereto you were not able to bear it, neither yet now are you able. Because one of the concepts in Judaism concerning being a full adult in the scripture is that you have the capacity to chew. See, it's like the animal has a cloven hoof, right? The cow has a cloven hoof, which makes it kosher, but that's not all that makes it kosher. It's also kosher because it chews the cud. So if you've got the capacity to chew on the word for long periods of time till you can digest it, then you're someone who's mature in the word. I'm a person who's not mature in the word. It's just going to have to be given plain, simple things that they don't have to think about. Just plain, simple instructions. He's saying, look, I'm just giving you plain and simple instructions. We haven't even got into the stuff that's confusing. We haven't even got into the stuff where we need a whole Beit Din or an entire Congress of judges, a Sanhedrin to help us understand how we should handle these things. He said, for you are yet carnal. That's like you're still fleshy people. For whereas there is among you envy and strife and divisions, are you not carnal? For you walk as men. And for while one says, I am of Paul, another will says, I am of Apollos, are you not carnal? Is that not what people do? Play in politics, right? Who then is Paul? And who is Apollos? But ministers whom you believed, even as Jehovah had gave to every man. I have planted, Apollos watered, but Elohim gave the increase. So then neither is he that planteth anything, neither is it he that watereth anything, but it is Elohim that gives the increase. Now he that plants and he that waters are one, and every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. So he's saying neither of the two of them. He's like, look, I started this ministry, but Apollos is taking you guys to whole new levels of explaining and helping you to grow. That doesn't mean you need to forget what I taught you because I taught you the basics. It doesn't mean you need to ignore what Apollos is saying because he's really pushing you to learn more. But you've got to understand the only reason that you can grow and learn and become more is because that Elohim or Jehovah is involved in what you're doing. And as long as he is the focus of what you're doing, you will be able to increase. So basically, quit worshiping Paul. Paul, yes, just a guy who never met Yeshua in person, who wrote letters to try to correct people who didn't know anything about the Torah so that they could understand more about what the life of a Pharisee, remember Paul was a Pharisee, and what the understanding of a Pharisee who was born and bred in the religion had that they did not have. All right. For we are laborers together with Elohim, and you are Elohim's husbandry, and you are Elohim's building. So you are the edifice that he has created. Okay, that's the church, right? It says, oh, it is upon Peter and upon here I will create my church. It is upon there that he will create his congregation, his ecclesia, his gathering of people who are like-minded in the fact that they serve Jehovah and Yeshua. Okay? According to the grace of Elohim, which is given unto me, as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another has builded upon. But let every man take heed how he builds thereupon. So basically, for other foundations can no man lay than that was laid, which is in Yeshua. Now, if any man build upon this foundation gold, silver, and precious stones, or wood, hay, and stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. So he's saying, here we catch the reference to the collection for the building of the tabernacle, which we didn't actually read about, but gold, silver, and it says precious stones here, but let's think of the you know what, let's check. Let's see if that's actually what that, does it actually say precious stones? Let's see, we're in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. See if I can jump to where it says stones. All right, gold, silver, precious stones, timios, timaeus. All right, Mr. Strong, where are we at? Valuable, costly, honored, esteemed, dear, honorable, precious, had in reputation. Why in the world? Gold, silver, lithos. All right, so there's that stones. Lithos. All right, apparently a primary word. Stone, literally or figuratively. Stumbling stone, small stones, a building, metaphor of Christ. Okay, so, yes, all right, so those are precious stones. When they took up the offering for the temple, they did take up precious stones as well, but they also did gold, silver, and bronze for making all of the gold of the tabernacle. The tabernacle had plenty of gold in it, plenty of silver in it, and plenty of bronze in it, and plenty of precious stones, at least in the ephod that was worn by the high priest. So here we see him saying, if a man build upon the foundation of gold, silver, and precious stones, wood, hay, and stubble, every man's work will be manifest, because it's going to be tried in a fire. Okay? And if any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. So he's saying, when you are burned in this trial by fire, it's not going to destroy, well, it will destroy you, but it will not destroy what you have done in the name of Jehovah, which is to say that if you have dedicated your life to Jehovah and everything that you do is for his glory, then you will not be destroyed because you are already gone. And only Jehovah dwells in the body that is referred to by your name. This is why Yeshua is going to give you a new name, because the old name really is not going to apply anymore, because the infant that was born to the parents that gave you the name is not the same man that is existing at the time when he has been tried by fire and been shown to be what he really is. You know not that you are the temple of Elohim, and that the Spirit of Elohim dwells in you. And if any man defiles the temple of Elohim, him shall Elohim destroy. For the temple of Elohim is holy, which temple you are. Okay? Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seems to be wise in this world, let him become a fool. So basically, if you know how to make money and you got great mathematical skills and all these other things, it's like, you know what? Just throw all that aside. Start from the kindergarten level when you're learning about how to be who Jehovah wants you to be. He don't need a new mathematician. He don't need a new businessman. He needs you to learn his instructions just like a baby would learn instructions. Then everything else can be integrated back in. because everything will be cultured and trimmed and corrected. You might be an excellent businessman, but you're a cheat and you never knew it. You might think of yourself as a good, upstanding guy, but when it comes down to it, compared to what the Word of God says, your business practices are immoral and are based fully in doing business in a crooked manner. And you may not even have known it. So if you let Yeshua or Jehovah train you up from the beginning, later you can say, I am a good businessman because I have gotten rid of the things that were evil that I did. Now I'm not only a good businessman, I'm a righteous businessman. Okay? So let's see. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with Elohim. For it is written, He takes the wise in their craftiness. And when he says takes him, he's like literally like, He'll catch you. And you thought you were good at what you were doing, but He can catch you. If He wants to, He'll just snatch you just like that. He'll grab you. Or He'll send men after you to get you, whatever, however you want to look at it. Point is, you ain't as smart as you thought you were. And if He actually decides to get involved in your life, He'll make sure you know it. And again, the Jehovah knoweth the things of the wise, that they are vain. And that doesn't mean vain as in self-interested. It means vain as in pointless, useless. You can be as smart as you want to. Guess what? You can have a pile of money that's a mile high. You going to take it with you when you're dead? Nope. You ain't going to have a penny. You're just going to have being dead. That's all you're going to have. And whether it be Paul or Apollos. Oh, sorry, skipped one. Therefore let no man glory in men, for all things are yours. Whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or the present things or things to come, all are yours, and you are Christ's, and Christ is God's. So he's saying, yeah, all these things are a part of you because you're a slave of Christ, who is the embodiment of Jehovah on the earth. Because as you become like Yeshua, you become an embodiment of Jehovah on the earth. Soon there's... Okay, let me try to make this make sense. We saw a wedding taking place. We've been reading the last few Torah portions about this wedding that's been taking place. When a husband and a wife come together, they become one flesh, right? So if we've wed ourselves as Israel, we've wed ourselves together with Jehovah, we become one flesh with Jehovah. Okay? We become Echad with Him. That means that the destiny of a wife is that she will conform to her husband. We are going to conform to Him. Whether we like it or not, if we have wed ourselves with Him, we're going to conform to Him until there is no longer an us. There's just Him. And we are all outcroppings of Him. That is perhaps the painful reason why this religion really should not appeal to a lot of people, because it is a death to self. And there's nothing that the body hates more than the idea of dying. People who want to commit suicide, let me tell you what, come and walk this walk, because you are gonna commit suicide, because the person that you were is going to be killed, and in the process of being killed, you will find a new life. How did Yeshua say? For the man who comes to save his own life, you're going to lose it. The man who's willing to lose his life, it's going to be saved. Okay? It's going to work the reverse of what seems normal. You're not going to get rewarded for what you do, because at the end of the road, there's not going to be a you. There's going to be Him in you. You are going to become a manifestation of the Most High on this earth. You are going to understand what patience and kindness and mercy and all these things that He does all the time are. Because you're not only because you're going to be a recipient of them, but because you're going to understand why you need to give them so that this world can work. Because greed, anger, vengeance, it's just not going to make a world that can work. And if we want to be able to continue on beyond these little lives that we get to have, we're going to have to learn some hard lessons about the spiritual things and how to exist in them, which then allows us to exist with one another. So, be blessed in Yeshua's name. Baruch haba Yehovah. Blessed in the name of Jehovah. Keep the commandments, keep the covenant. Dwell at peace as best you can with everyone else on this earth. If you can be a light, if you can dwell at peace with them, you can be a light. And if you shine that light long enough, it'll have an impact on other people. Your job is to make the tikkun olam, that is to say, you are to fix this place by being a light in it. And when you shine your light, you heal this world. Now, I know some people are going to say, oh, no, nothing going to be right until Yeshua comes. I'm not going to disagree. But I'm going to tell you that if the master arrives and finds you idle in his field, he is going to whoop you like you ain't never been whooped. So don't be idle in the field. Just work like you never know when he's going to show up. Work like, as far as you know, he ain't ever going to show up. I'm not saying lose the hope. I'm saying work like you have like it could be 5 minutes from now, or it could be 5 centuries from now. It could be 2 days down the road. It could be the end of your life, the very last breath you take. Just stop wasting the time that has been given to you on you. That's probably the best way to say it. I know that sounds so backwards. Because you're like, I only live once. I got to have the life I got to have. Well, maybe. But if that's true, then what's the point in living? I mean, if there's nothing to gain. I mean, if you had all the wealth in the world, all the women, all the wine, all the whatever you wanted, what good's it going to do you? Because when you're dead, you're dead. And you might say, well, I got to rock out. Well, you're not even going to remember it if all you do is die when you're dead. You're not even going to remember how you rocked out. So what was the point in getting to rock out? Why not invest in something better? Invest in the world. Invest in the lives of other people. Invest in being a living manifestation of the one true God. So be blessed in Yeshua's name. Walk upright. Be the people of God. Be the people of the light. Be the people who are the salt of the earth. Who are that which has to be put upon a sacrifice to make it all. You can't give a sacrifice that put some salt on it. So be that salt that gets put on that sacrifice before it's offered up. Be that priest that helps other people understand who it is they're offering to. Be that king who makes the righteous ruling when people need to see someone who can judge honestly, truthfully, and righteously, and not take a bribe, not show favor. The man who can look at all these other people and say, the only thing that matters is that the will of Jehovah be done. Be that person. In Yeshua's name, amen.